Hi, I'm Max Keiser. This is the Keiser Report. What if I told you that everything you thought you knew about that movie, The Matrix, is wrong? Stacy?
Max, in the past week, I was very surprised to learn that being red-pilled is now considered racist, alt-right, and some of the worst things on earth you could possibly say in American media. So let's look at what the original meaning of red pill is. Of course, this is a reference to the film The Matrix that was made, and which is a huge hit, especially amongst online woke communities, really woke, not the fake woke of, say, MSNBC, and, you know, the Bitcoin community and the meme sort of community. Red pill is a very, very, very famous meme. And the meaning, the actual meaning of red pill that has now been deemed by the likes of MSNBC, New York Times, and Washington Post as evil. You cannot say this. Red pill refers to becoming enlightened to the truth about reality, especially a truth that is difficult to accept or exposes disillusions.
That's right. That's what we learned from the film The Matrix. And Morpheus presented Neo with two choices, the blue pill, and everything stays the same, or the red pill, and you go down the rabbit hole, as he described it. And now in 2020, because the idea of an enlightened population is scary to the entrenched oligopolists, cartographists, and psychopaths, they are trying to do exactly what Orwell warned about Newspeak in his dystopian novel, 1984, by memory holing the word red pill, or give it a new meaning. So therefore, did I actually go and see The Matrix? Or was it just like the cat walking backwards? Am I even in this moment now, or am I in Rachel Maddow's subconscious? According to Rachel Maddow, I don't exist. And all words don't exist, all poetry doesn't exist, all film doesn't exist, all artists don't exist. Only her view of a perfect, elegant expression of Hillary's malfeasance exists.
But of course, these people who escape the Matrix meet online, and they have anonymous names. They don't know each other in real meet space. And that does not mean anything to them. They are able to overpower the Matrix. The people who want you to believe what you're having is a red, a steak, a real juicy steak, when it's not. So the Agent Smith of this world is the sort of whatever cable news channel feeds your partisan hungers and urges and desires to hate that other side. They direct your hate towards the other side. You have trigger words that make you think you're eating steak and you're getting the red meat of the politics. And so they're always trying to keep you as part of the Matrix and not understanding the actual nature of truth in many ways. And we've covered that so many times over the Keiser Report. But in terms of what we focus on, which is finance and economics, one thing that's starting to be difficult for them to hide is the money printing. So people are starting to understand that it's not real steak, that something's wrong with this system, that we keep on printing money and it's actually just sucking the life out of us. Here's a tweet. The official narrative, especially since Greenspan, is that the Fed is this wise group of impartial high priests who keep the economy from busts and work for all Americans. If you look at the actual results, not the narrative, you can clearly see that the narrative is nonsense. So this is the share of income going to, actually wealth in the economy to the top 1%. This is from the Federal Reserve own research, and you see it's hitting all-time highs. The Matrix, the Agent Smiths multiply, and they fill the airwaves and the editorial pages of the New York Times and Washington Post to make sure you are not listening to these evil words, these evil truths, casting doubt on whether or not this is a genuine red steak.
Right, and the evidence that it doesn't work is clear. It's very clear. You can just look at the money velocity number, right? So this is something we've been pointing out for a few years. It is the barometer of, is the Fed's money printing to cause inflation and to cure deflation working? Okay, let's look at the money velocity chart. It's going straight down, and the rate of accelerating towards zero has increased. So look, if you dig up the corpse from the ground and you take a bag of plasma and you stick it in the arm of the corpse and you pump it, and the corpse keeps decaying, you would have to conclude that you're not effective in your transfusion. If you have a dead economy, and the United States and global economy died in the year 2008, and then you stick a bag of fiat money into the corpse and you pump it, and money velocity is continuing to decay and decompose, I think we can say now, 12 years later, that this theory of trying to animate a dead economy with fiat money, the cyanide of finance, doesn't work.
Well, exactly. And there's no better sign of the fact that that is not a stake that you think is your economy in front of you. That is not a stake that you think is a functioning marketplace, a free market there in the economy. That the Fed printing all this money is not an endless buffet for all. And that is that money velocity number you point out. Since 2000, the Fed printing money has made money velocity decrease and reach new lows every year since 2011. So 2000 is when the matrix really arrived for the US economy. That's when we saw the end of Glass-Steagall. That's when we saw the introduction of the Commodity Futures Modernization Act. And we also saw the rise of China into the WTO the following year. Therefore, that was when the people running the matrix decided we don't need anybody in this economy, because now that we have the rest of the world producing our goods and services for us, the elite, just throw some money, throw some basically brioche, the equivalent of brioche, throw some money at these people and just keep them docile for as long as possible. Keep throwing them, steaks, which aren't really steaks. It's just food stamps and lack of dignity and human respect.
Well, it's like, again, using Matrix as an analogy here. So Agent Agent Smith, who keeps multiplying ad infinitum during the film, that is the money printing, right? It doesn't make the Matrix any less of the Matrix, right? So, but to defend it, he has to keep multiplying. But this is just doubling down on the fraud that is the Matrix. So you need to, that Agent Smith has to multiply indefinitely. That's why Chairman Jay Powell goes on 60 Minutes and tells the reporter on 60 Minutes, point blank, we can multiply indefinitely. That's a threat, like Agent Smith threatening Neo. Like, look, I can multiply to 1,000 times. You can never beat me because I can multiply to quantitative easing, as Neil Kashkari said on 60 Minutes, with QE to infinity. We can print money to infinity. That's Agent Smith threatening our livelihoods, our humanity, with this threat of infinite replication of garbage fiat money. And so this is where we're at. It's 12 years into this mess, and we have solutions on hand, but it's not easy.
The solutions have been there since the end of the dot-com era, when we saw the emergence of Web 2.0 and the emergence of basically online communities. And some of them, yes, are gross. Some of them do, come up with disgusting ideas. But within that, they also come up with, brutal images and memes and understanding of the matrix of the world around us. And this is from the alternative media that we have seen. The pushback, especially, is getting worse and worse with each crash. I.e., that's like the cat walking backwards in the Matrix. That suddenly people realize, wait, this isn't quite right. We're not eating steak. We don't have a healthy economy. None of this is real. Like, everybody's home right now on lockdown, but the markets are still going up. Like, do we need any of us? Like, what do we actually do all day? What have we been doing for all these years? So you're starting to see that, like, alt media, like Joe Rogan, who has millions and millions of followers, when he endorsed one candidate here, which was Bernie Sanders during the primaries, the eruption in the Matrix, the Agent Smiths on cable news, was that he's racist, he's all sorts of stuff, which anybody who watches or listens to his stuff, and I do occasionally, not much, that much, but I have never seen anything, what I know in my history, just like I know red pill for 20 years as one thing, and they suddenly decide to change the meaning.
Well, using the Matrix again as an analogy, so we find out toward the end of the film that humans are batteries, and they
Yes.
are powering the matrix. And similarly, when you asked, well, what are we all doing here? I mean, we're all locked up and we have no jobs and the stock market keeps going higher. Well, what's our purpose? The purpose is that in our fiat-controlled fractional reserve banking world of central bank domination, for every click on Facebook, the Facebook Corporation can borrow $100,000. They can monetize that click, which has a nominal value of a penny. Mark Zuckerberg can go to the banking system and say, I need to borrow $100,000. With that $100,000, he can buy back his own stock, which makes it go higher, which makes his stock options go higher, which makes him $80, $90 billion. So your purpose on life is what I call the casino gulag, is you need to click the ad, get a pill. Click the ad, get a pill. That's your purpose. You are a battery. That's it. I mean, it's pretty clear. Poetry many times describes reality to perfection. As Picasso once said, art is a lie that tells the truth. The Matrix is a lie that tells the truth.
Well, let's wrap this all up, because what it is important is to keep the masses from understanding this. And that's why you're seeing the shutdown in alt media that's been getting worse and worse every year, the deplatforming, the allegations that there's some mysterious force controlling all our minds through Twitter and stuff like that. Here is an example of this notion of what they believe in the Matrix, the Agent Smith. This is from Bloomberg News. It's a modern dilemma for the ultra-wealthy. A yacht awaits, but how to safely reach it without exposure to the germ-ridden masses?
Right. So the yacht in question is owned by a hedge fund manager whose hedge fund, whether it could be Citadel, for example, or Ben Bernanke, former Fed chairman, sits on the board and is run by a guy who just bought an apartment in New York for $250 million. So the yacht was a gift from the Fed.
Yes,
and that it sits over there in the Bellhaven Country Club in New Hampshire, in
He's a quintillionaire.
Connecticut, for example. He's a quintillionaire. It's a gift. And his job is to buy government bonds that are going in negative in yield, right? So those government negative yielding bonds, negative interest rates, which will bankrupt everyone in the world, if you're a hedge fund guy who's been gifted a yacht to buy those bonds, you can make money on price appreciation if you're on that side of the interest rate apartheid wall, as I call it. And so that's the quid pro quo. That's the deal. That's the deal. And if somebody has coronavirus on your way to your yacht, well, we know how that goes. Hey, let's take a break. When we come back, much more coming your way. Welcome back to the Keiser Report. I'm Max Keiser. Time now to turn to Robert Breedlove. He's been causing quite a stir in the Bitcoin and finance circles all over the world with some of his recent essays. They're really outstanding. He's the founder and CEO of the Parallax Digital. He's an amazing writer, offering big picture philosophical insights into Bitcoin and many other monetary phenomenon. Robert, great to have you on.
Thanks for having me, Max.
The essay that really just set the world on fire here, Bitcoin is as special as the number zero, you write. Bitcoin is to money as zero is to mathematics. Elaborate on this.
In the past, many numeral systems didn't include a zero. And around the 7th century, an ancient Indian mathematician named Brahmagupta, who actually discovered what he called the concept of zero in meditation. So his experience of the void inspired him to make zero a number. And by adding zero to a numeral system, it made it qualitatively faster, quantitatively easier, and less prone to error. So the zero-based numeral system, which became the Hindu-Arabic numeral system, evolved into the numbers we use today. So it outcompeted all other numeral systems worldwide because it was so much more efficient. And I make the argument comparing Bitcoin's discovery of absolute scarcity for money as a similarly profound discovery in terms of energy efficiency that's outcompeting other monetary systems.
Right, this idea of zero or absolute scarcity was a novel idea at the time, applied to mathematics. It opened up a whole new world of mathematics and way of thinking. And before that time, all calculations were extraordinarily cumbersome. You talk about various numerology systems, the Roman system, et cetera, where it's quite cumbersome and awkward. But when you add the zero, suddenly so much is possible in both mathematics and the concept itself of nothingness or the void being codified and quantified like that. creates an upgrade to the hive mind, which is something else you write about, because the concept of zero, it wasn't adopted quickly in Europe. It took hundreds of years for it to make its way into Europe. It was unstoppable, as you could say, as Bitcoin is, and it became, as you quote, a sort of software upgrade to the global hive mind. A little elaboration there, if you can.
You know, we know today empirically that meditation benefits the mind in many ways. It increases gray matter and other things of this sort. And it seems that by facilitating the discovery of the void, which is symbolized in the number zero, that it actually gave us an update to our collective mind as well. I kind of look at the world economy as sort of the interconnection of global consciousness. So it's all of our minds connected and coordinated by price signals. And I just thought it was interesting that such a pragmatic and useful concept was discovered in a spiritual or through a spiritual practice. And the other thing about zero is that it not only made math much more efficient, but it also led to the discovery of negative numbers, which took us into the domain of the imaginary, and all of, basically became the cornerstone of calculus, on which all modern physical sciences are built today. So biology, chemistry, physics, everything relies on calculus to function. So every miracle of modernity basically was accessed by the discovery of zero.
And Bitcoin's proof of work technology is constantly chasing down the rabbit hole toward absolute zero, because the nonce upon which the proof of work algorithm is based is constantly getting smaller, infinitesimally smaller, as part of the difficulty adjustment that's at the core of that technology. So there is some analogy there. And it seems, your comments about the universal unconscious or the global hive mind are fascinating. And I think, as you describe it, prices give a way to coordinate that global hive mind. And that's been true since antiquity, when price signals are really the cue for how we travel, how we trade, how we think, how culture develops. And money, we put money into that mix. We had for thousands of years, the only real money was gold, because it satisfied the greatest number of people in that universal hive mind as a medium of exchange. And now Bitcoin seems to be doing the same thing. But as you point out, it's following a tried and true path of a philosophical, mathematical query by the human mind as it explores our very universe. Now, you've recently written a Medium post titled Bitcoin and the Tyranny of Time Scarcity. So what do you mean by the tyranny of time scarcity, and what does Bitcoin fix?
Historically, it's very important to understand the evolution of money. Money has to fulfill 5 critical traits. It has to be divisible, has to be durable, has to be portable, has to be recognizable, and very importantly, it has to be scarce. And historically, monetary metals best fulfilled those functions. And of the monetary metals, gold was the most scarce. That's why it became what I call global prime money, which is essentially the monetary foundation and foundation of sovereignty for governments and central banks worldwide. The innovation of Bitcoin is truly momentous in that because it is pure information, it optimizes or maxes out those 5 qualities. So information is basically infinitely divisible. It can be subdivided and recombined at near zero cost. It's infinitely durable because information doesn't decompose. It's infinitely portable because, as we know, we can move information at the speed of light via telecommunications. And it's infinitely recognizable because information is the most objectively discernible substance in the universe, like the written word, for instance. But the genius behind Bitcoin is that Satoshi combined thermodynamics and game theory essentially to construct money that has absolute scarcity, meaning that as of when the last Bitcoin is mined in the mid-22nd century, its money supply will reach absolute zero. And this was not possible with any physical money, because everything physical in the world is just a function of our time necessary to produce it. So if we could flip a switch today and make everyone on Earth's sole occupation gold mining, the supply of gold would soon soar. This is simply not possible with Bitcoin. So Bitcoin becomes a more perfect reflection of time, and time scarcity is essentially what we're competing against. That's what we do in the world economy. We trade to increase our collective time savings and energy efficiency to overcome the impositions of time scarcity.
You mentioned thermodynamics there. That would be the second law of thermodynamics you're referencing?
I refer to both of them in the piece, but yeah, the second law is the one that has the thermodynamic arrow of time. So every closed system tends towards more entropy. And we basically work against that entropy.
You know, you talk about time, you talk about energy here, and you know, in your essay, I said everyone's got to read the essay, Bitcoin and the number zero. Recently in macroeconomics, we've had some very interesting things going on. First of all, interest rates went negative for the first time ever in thousands of years, and oil price went negative. So here you have a situation where time is now going backwards in the bond market or the interest rate market, and matter is gone into antimatter because you know, energy is now priced with a negative handle. What's your comment there?
You know, we saw in the 20th century this ideological competition between socialism and capitalism, where in Soviet Russia, they tried to control, they being the government, tried to control the means and ends of all production in attempts to reach this utopia. And we saw that model implode because, again, it didn't have price signals. There was no ability for their economy to adapt. And we saw capitalism here in the US outcompete that because we left half of the market open to free market entrepreneurship. But the other half of the market, worldwide, which is money, you know, money being one half of every transaction, is still based on a socialistic model. So it's literally the fifth point in Marx's playbook. So I think what we're seeing is the unraveling of what I like to call monetary socialism, which is more popularly called central banking. And you know, the markets are intended to generate truth in the form of prices and innovations. And when you corrupt that price discovery and technology discovery mechanism, you get these haywire consequences like we're seeing in the world today with negative rates and negative oil prices.
So to be clear, what you're saying here is that negative rates and negative oil prices are the result of not market-driven price discovery, but pure market manipulation by central authorities. And that anyone who thinks, like, for example, if I watch mainstream media, if I Wall Street Journal, Financial Times, CNBC, they seem to refer to these negative prices for oil and interest rates as just part of the capitalist system and it happens, but that's false. It's not a legitimate price signal. This is the result of meddling, manipulation, and a centralization and almost a Politburo-driven communist dictatorship of markets that is crashing the global economy, in particular the United States. I think that's pretty clear now. Even Bank of America just recently accused the central bank of engaging in fake markets, right? So no one's fooled by the fact that these prices they're not reflective of any supply and demand curves out there. So this leads to another one of your tenets as a philosopher of time and money in Bitcoin. Tell us about time theft.
Yeah, sure. So I make the argument that essentially money as a technology is intended to epitomize time in the sense that we sacrifice our time to obtain money, and we expect to be able to redeem that money for commensurate sacrifices from others. So it's the way we trade our time, essentially. And when you look at it from that perspective, anyone that can centrally control and manipulate the supply of money can essentially steal time from people directly. Another way to think about this is kind of like a technology backdoor, right? It's where the central bank issuer can siphon off value slowly and surreptitiously off of the savings of everyone in their jurisdiction, or everyone holding dollars for that matter, over time. So in that sense, I like to refer to central banking as an institutionalized system of time theft.
So in other words, when prices go negative, it's a form of stealing. It's as simple as that. And the fact that you have a huge concentration of wealth amongst a fewer and fewer circle of crony capitalists, they're getting wealthy because they're stealing. And it's a racket. It's racketeering. And mafia-style capitalism has replaced free market capitalism in America and around the world. And it's resulting in horrendous and horrific social dislocations. Now, Goldman Sachs was in the Bitcoin news this week when they said that Bitcoin is not suitable investment for its clients, does not generate cash flow like bonds, relies on a greater fool to pay more in order to profit.
Yeah, it's been said that money is the bubble that never pops, which essentially means that there's a monetary premium and an industrial use case for any commodity. And essentially, gold has the highest monetary premium and lowest industrial use. That's what made it money. But Bitcoin is pure monetary premium. It's the purest form of money we've ever had. So anytime you see this propaganda coming out from clearly entrenched interests like Goldman Sachs, just ask yourself the question, what is money? And keep following that rabbit down the rabbit hole. And I promise you'll land on those 5 critical traits of divisibility, durability, portability, recognizability, and scarcity. And once you arrive there, I think it becomes very clear that Bitcoin is the most perfect monetary technology the world has ever had.
Yeah, and it's ironic because Goldman Sachs sells negative rate bonds that have negative cash flow, and they're caught time and again stealing. So I don't know what gives them the right to say anything. All right, Robert Breedlove, thanks for being on the Keiser Report, and that's going to do it for this edition of the Keiser Report with me, Max Keiser, and Stacy Herbert. I want to thank our guest, Robert Breedlove. He's over there, CEO of Parallax Digital. If you want to catch us on Twitter, it's Keiser Report. Until next time, bye, y'all.